I haven't done a review in about a month or so, and to be honest, it's been down to not actually having anything to review. I've really made videos of most of my guns, and only until a couple of days ago, didn't really have anything particularly interesting on you. However, over the last couple of days, I've got the gun I'm reviewing today. I've recently got a Marushin Winchester as well, which will be an interesting video because there pretty much aren't any videos or information about those guns out there. Same with this. And I've also just got the new KJW ASG CZ P09 Duty gas blowback pistol. So I'll be making a video of that when I've got some time. I thought I'd start with this because in some ways it's the most interesting. As you can see, it's got a very large box, which I really couldn't fit on camera. Quite a nice box, really. As you can see, it's a Marushin, who are a relatively well-known Japanese company, one of the large Japanese companies that produce a lot of revolvers and rare gas blowbacks and things like that. Not to be confused with Marushin, who are a totally different company. As you can see, this is a Mauser M712 Carbine, 8mm blowback, which looks like that. Again, 8mm. It's got their pretty terrible LD2 hop-up system, which really doesn't make any sense. Anyway, very large cardboard box. All in Japanese, of course. Inside it's quite nice. You've got big chunks of polystyrene to hold everything together. You've also got 2 layers of this squidgy foam that hold everything together. The gun is also supported by a couple of little inserts. You get everything we're sort of accustomed to with an airsoft gun. Big long loading rod. Sorry, not loading rod. Unjamming rod. Cleaning rod. So that could come in useful if you haven't got a particularly long one. Got your manual, which I've got to say is pretty useless, to be honest. It's got a couple of targets, usual kind of Japanese stuff, warranty information. Yeah, the manual's pretty useless because even though it tells you the basic operation, which is fine and everything as you'd expect, one thing I really value these manuals for is to have a breakdown of the gun, not an actual disassembly, but at least an exploded diagram. And I've never seen a gun that doesn't come with an exploded diagram. However, this one is only partially exploded. So it shows you how the trigger mechanism goes into the lower receiver, shows you how the stock and everything bolt on, but the upper receiver and the firing mechanism, which is the most complex part of it, is simply shown as one unit. So that's really not very helpful, and I had to pretty much just work it out as I went along when I was taking this gun apart. So unless you're particularly competent with taking things apart, this is the kind of gun you really don't want to. Although it's not too bad, to be honest, once you figure it all out. Something else interesting on here. 2008 is when this gun was produced, so it's about 6 years old, which isn't particularly old. But they certainly aren't made anymore, I don't believe. So don't see a whole lot of these about. I also got a spare magazine with my order, which came in this box. And I should probably say, start off with, this gun was ordered from WGC Shop, who are pretty good. They did my order very quickly. And to be honest, this isn't a gun that I've always wanted or anything. I simply saw it for sale, and the magazines are on sale as well. I had a good deal, and I just thought I'd try it because it's unique, it's interesting, and I've never seen a video of this gun, at least English speaking. So yeah, spare magazines usually cost about £50. As you can see there, 50,000 yen, which roughly translates to, well, the best way to do it is to remove the last 2 digits, and that's the price in dollars. So $50, £35, £40. But yeah, they're about £50 on most sites to get to the UK. This was $30, so £20 or so, which is good. As you can hear, there's something moving in it. This is because something I did to both of the magazines is get rid of the followers that came with it, the big chunky metal followers. Also replace the springs that came with the magazines, and I'll explain why I did that later. So anyway, got a spare magazine with it. There's my invoice if you're wondering about the price. I'm not sure how much this gun normally costs, probably around $250 or so, and they had it for sale for $170, which is pretty good, because that was about £120 or so, 110, £120, the price of a cheap gas blowback pistol, and I got this pretty cool Japanese-made carbine. Anyway, the gun. Here is the gun. Hopefully just about fits on screen there. And as you can see, it is pretty cool. You will not see something like this at your average skirmish. Personally, I think it looks better without the magazine, or with the short magazine if you buy one of those. And there we go. So, got to say, first impressions when I lifted this out of the box weren't fantastic. I was a little bit disappointed and thought, why the hell did I buy this? But to be honest, I think that about quite a lot of the stuff I buy, and then they kind of warm on me, which was definitely the case for this, and I'm pretty happy I got it now. Just give you a look. I appreciate the lighting probably isn't great. It's kind of early morning, and it's very hard to get the lighting quite right here because it's either too dark or too light, and at the moment it's kind of yellowy for whatever reason. But yeah, so this is the Marushin M712 Carbine. Marushin are the only company, except for the very cheap clone that Turcell make, that make a blowback Mauser. Actually, no, I'm lying. KWC now make a CO2 Mauser. But before that, this was pretty much the only one. They also make a series of probably more successful than this, non-blowback ones, so double action trigger, non-blowback. They make a carbine version of that, so if you're interested in this gun, the blowback version, don't mistakenly buy the M712 Maxi, which is the non-blowback version, because you're going to get a totally different gun. Looks the same, of course, but it's non-blowback. Not nearly as cool, but probably performs better if you want that. And they also make, of course, non-carbine versions with the shorter barrel. They make them in kit form that you have to build yourself. All of them are M712 based, which means they're select fire guns. So they make a heavyweight 6mm version, they make normal 8mm versions. Normal is 8mm is quite normal for Marushin. So yeah, they make quite a few of these, and they're pretty much the only company that has any kind of selection when it comes to Mausers. So anyway, out of the box. Yeah, I wasn't particularly impressed. What disappointed me was the fact that it's a little bit wobbly. Luckily, it just needed a bit of tightening on all the screws, but the furniture was wobbly. As you can see, it's still got a bit of flex in it. Not that this is the kind of gun that you're going to be too rough with, but certainly when shouldering it, if you make the effort to bend it, yeah, it does have some flex in the body. And to be honest, there's only so much you can do with ABS plastic. You've got two big hefty chunks of wood held together by a relatively small piece of plastic. So unless we're talking about steel and wood, or at least some kind of metal, you're always going to get a certain amount of flex. But it's not terrible. I've certainly not too disappointed by it anymore. I'm relatively gentle with it. It certainly isn't a combat-oriented kind of gun, and unless you're really crazy, you really wouldn't want to skirmish with this. The other thing that was a little bit disappointing was it felt a bit light. I wasn't expecting it to be too weighty, but yeah, a little bit light. Nothing too terrible. Really, the main thing was the body. I knew it was going to be regular ABS because it wasn't labelled as a heavyweight version, but still, it's just cheap feeling, to be honest, which is a shame because you can tell it's actually been quite well made, good quality molds and everything, but it's just very light, very plasticky, very cheap feeling ABS. Like you can look at that flex. The magwell all across its length can just be bent. And I'm sure without the internal mechanism in, the same can be said for the rest of the receiver. It's just flexible. So, and it isn't limited to the receiver. The rather long barrel that pokes out is again all plastic, which isn't a deal breaker for me. I'm still happy with this gun overall, but you know, for the sake of just being, you know, putting a metal tube on here instead of a plastic one. It's a shame they did that, because I'd kind of expect from a more premium sort of brand, just for that extra effort, to make it feel a bit better. Even though Japanese makers obviously have certain laws with what can be metal or not. Barrels, I've never seen that as a problem on AEGs and things, having a metal barrel, so that would have been nice. And unfortunately there aren't any upgrade kits for this or anything, so you're stuck with how it is. Anyway, besides that, well made, and I was impressed with the wood. Wood's very nice. You don't get a whole lot of Japanese guns with wood on, to be honest, for a decent price. I guess it's maybe Japan being relatively small islands, series of islands. They don't really have a whole lot of natural resources to make, you know, wooden airsoft parts from. And they're generally pretty expensive when you do get wood out of Japan. So to get a solid piece of real wood furniture on this gun is really what changes it from something that feels quite cheap and a bit tacky to something that's actually very nice and you could probably display. So if this had to come with a plastic stock, I wouldn't have sent it back because it would have cost too much, but it would have been straight up for sale, because it would have had no weight. It would have looked pretty rubbish. Yeah, it's strange, because when you talk about build quality with this, it's a real mixed bag, because it's a mixture of kind of subpar for a Japanese brand. Material wise, quality's fine, there's some materials, and at the same time you've got really nice wood, very nice, very smooth, nice grain, nicely finished, just the right colour. Yeah, so a real mixed bag when it comes to how it's built. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the features before I get into the mechanics and how it works and everything. Let's start up at the muzzle end. Some of the few bits of external metal. Unfortunately, the sight post and its mount are not. I'm only referring to this tiny little end cap that holds it all together. That is pretty much the only metal in regard to the barrel assembly. On the outside, of course. And in there you can see the pretty intimidating bore of the 8mm round. So this pretty much holds the barrel on securely, otherwise everything wobbles. So make sure that's always tight. There's no good way of really tightening it, but get that on as best you can. As I said, the foresight and mounting area is unfortunately plastic. That's another thing, just like the barrel, that is disappointing for, you know, a well-known Japanese brand. I mean, I don't know how much more it would have cost simply to have a cast metal front sight, but it really would have made a lot of difference in terms of how it feels and the overall sort of appeal of the gun. Second disappointing thing about it is the fact that it's very loosely dovetailed in, and although I have now glued it, simply prodding it, it will come straight out. It's very loose dovetail, and pretty much every time I went to go shoot this gun, I'd line up the sights and realise there's nothing to line up because the sight's fallen off at some point. So that's something you definitely want to glue down if you were going to use this sort of seriously. As I said, the mounting area is also plastic. Only redeeming factor is that it's quite far away from your hands, so you don't really find yourself fiddling too much with it or anything, because you wouldn't want to. Yeah, I think if it was up front here, you know, right there, if it was the pistol version and it was all plastic, it would be a bit sort of cheap and it would be right in the way, but it's tucked away at the end of the barrel. You kind of forget that it's plastic when you're actually shooting the gun, so that's alright, I suppose. But again, a bit disappointing combined with the plastic barrel, which is just regular ABS and feels a little bit lumpy, like hasn't been cast very well. So yeah, a bit disappointing. As you can see, all the plastic's kind of finished in this shiny finish, which on a modern gun might look a bit odd, because most modern guns kind of got that flat Cerakoted kind of look to them, but for an old blued gun it actually kind of looks better to be a little bit reflective and shiny. At least the barrel looks quite shiny and almost blued, so that's not too bad, but again it's not the best quality. It almost makes me think that this was sort of a budget option gun from the off. So maybe that 170 price tag was kind of what they were always going to sell as, rather than a really good deal. Anyway, still happy with it. Anyway, stamped on the bottom of the barrel, you've got when it was made, which I've never seen on an airsoft gun before, which is interesting. January 2008, STGA. I assume STGA is kind of like ASGK, kind of a Japanese proof mark kind of quality thing. But yeah, I've never seen that stamped on a gun before, so that's pretty cool. Moving up, we've got this very nice chunk of wood, which is your fore end, which isn't the most sort of ergonomic design in the world. You kind of end up holding the barrel because it's very thin. So, yeah. It's got this big sort of lip that comes back round, and it almost acts like a Magpul angled grip. You can kind of put your hand halfway and it's kind of angled, or you can use the traditional rifle bit, or if you wanted, you could just hold it like that. Kind of like little carbine grip, sorry, not carbine grip, like sort of like submachine gun forward kind of grip thing. But yeah, nice bit of wood, solid, held on pretty well. You've got one big screw holding it to the barrel, other screw holding it to the lower receiver, so that helps hold everything solidly together. Well, slightly solidly. Moving back, you've got this kind of attractive kind of design. I think it's kind of like has architectural kind of qualities to it. It's got all these nice curves and angles, and you do indeed have an adjustable hop-up, which is adjusted with a supplied Allen key straight through the top there, and it does actually work. I'll get onto sort of performance and mechanics later, but yeah, I was really expecting to be disappointed with how it shot, but not nearly as bad as I thought. Of course, we've got the bolt, which is fully working up at the top here. The bolt's sort of made up of two sections. You've got sort of the carrier, which is the rear section, and the bits that are going a bit silver, and then you've got the actual bolt. And I assumed it would be a bolt and then a loading nozzle inside the bolt, a very thin loading nozzle, but actually that black bit that you see about to move, there you go, is actually the loading nozzle, so it's kind of external, which is interesting. So you've got your bolt there. Again, gas blowback Mausers are pretty rare. You see quite a few of the non-blowback ones. I think it's HFC make a all-metal non-blowback one, which is pretty popular, but to have that full working action is pretty cool. Well, I say full working, it just about works. It's all pretty rudimentary. So anyway, you've got your opening there, and you've got back here what would be the guides for a stripper clip to load it, if you weren't going to change the magazine. Anyway, receiver is all ABS plastic, kind of shiny, kind of cheap, quite flexible, but at least there's not a whole lot of it. That's all I can say. It's definitely outnumbered, outmassed, or whatever you'd say, by the wood, which is good. I think if I'd have bought the pistol version, which obviously stops there and doesn't have any wood up front, I would have been pretty disappointed for the fact that the whole gun is made out of this kind of creaky, not so nice plastic. The fact that this has got all this wood on it kind of makes up for it, to be honest. So I'm not too bothered. But yeah, if you're a fan of modern polymers that are all fibre reinforced and nice and tough, this is definitely sort of showing its age a bit. And I think a brand new gun, you wouldn't be happy if it came with plastic like this. And by brand new, I mean sort of modern production. You know, if you went and bought an M4 and it was made of this, you'd throw it away. Get a refund, you would not want to keep it. Okay, so you've got your magwell there, which you may have noticed when I've shown you it before, is actually angled. The magazines aren't square, sorry, rectangular. They're I thought that this was a problem. I thought that it somehow warped and the wood was actually squishing it or something, but actually that's just the shape of the magazine. It's kind of wedge shaped, and that's down to the shape of the cartridges, which are kind of a bottleneck cartridge, kind of like a miniature AK round or something that requires, well, it doesn't require, but it suits that shape of magazine as it gets much thinner towards the front. Well, that was a pretty terrible description, but you get the idea. It's not a typical pistol cartridge that's straight walled. It is a bottleneck cartridge, which generates quite high pressures. So anyway, magazine wells there. Here is your magazine. I might as well stop with the gun tour and talk about the magazine a little bit, which are not the most impressive part of the gun. They add a fair bit of weight. They weigh about 400 grams, so it takes the gun from 1.5 kilos or so, which is running out of memory stick capacity there, so I better hurry up. So yeah, the magazines, I do have 2 of them, as I said. They're pretty standard layout in terms of valve at the bottom to fill. Takes pretty much any gas you like. I did have a couple of slight leaking issues, but with a bit of silicone, they've sorted themselves out. So I've got 2 mags. I generally use Abbey Ultra, which is pretty medium powered. As I showed you earlier, I did actually take out the followers from these. They were big chunky metal followers, and I replaced them with my own sort of homemade plastic followers, which have the effect of locking the bolt back when you're empty, because out of the box the gun won't lock back. There isn't any kind of bolt lock mechanism. So by adding my own little follower, what happens is when you shoot it with the last shot, it'll lock back only about halfway, and of course as soon as I drop the mag, it does return to normal. But it's better than just firing until all the gas is gone, or until you quickly let go of the trigger. So that might be something you're interested in if you get one of these, because personally I hate not having a bolt lock or something to stop it shooting when it's out of BBs. It's got these big red valves which look a little odd when you look through the top of the gun and see them, but they did that for whatever reason. Quite a complex magazine design. You've got all these cutouts and bits. Got to say, disappointing thing about these magazines, which really comes down to the rather giant 8mm BBs that it shoots, is that it has a capacity of only 13 shots. Now the real one has a capacity of 20 shots. This would hold 20. So it's very disappointing that the Airsoft version would hold 7 less rounds. And actually, the custom-made follower in this one only holds 12 now. So again, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's realistic in some ways, how it looks and everything, but magazine capacity certainly isn't realistic. 8mm BBs look like this. I'm not sure why they've started making them in blue. They used to be white and maybe green, or light green, so dark green. But yeah, these ones were blue. These are the .4s, which I would recommend. Anything lighter is really too light. And .4 is pretty much equivalent to a .25 or a .28 of a 6mm BB. And there is a big size difference, which is really why the magazine capacity is reduced. They're pretty expensive as well. That little bag there of 500 shots, show you again, 500 shots in there, and it costs £10, whereas I could buy 5,000 .25s for the same cost, so they're 10 times as expensive as a regular BB, which is a pretty daunting kind of figure. But again, it's not the kind of gun you're going to shoot a whole lot. You're probably not going to skirmish with it. You can see here the massive size difference, which is always what kills the capacity. Loading is simple enough. The original followers would have had a spring, would have had a little thing you pull down, but these you just push in the top now. So there we've got a couple. Now put some more in. They are double stacked, but the opening inside the mag just isn't quite wide enough to really get a proper double stack. So again, only 13 shots you've got in this. And it clicks into the body like so. No problem there. Haven't really shown you the other side of the gun a whole lot. The other side has got some trademarks I'll show in a second, and the magazine release is pretty much same as an M16 M4 style. It's just right by your finger there. Simple little push button. Interestingly, I found that one of the magazines, which is this one, does drop free from the gun. The other one that came, I can't remember, does it? Actually, it does. Yeah, one of them was a little bit stiff to begin with, but they do both drop now. No problem with that. Rear sight is just like an AK kind of style. Other way around, actually. The AK is just like this. As you can see, it's metal and it's graduated all the way to a kilometre or 1,000 yards, whatever it is, which is highly optimistic even for the real one. And for Airsoft, you obviously want to keep it down to the, well, under the 50-metre setting. That's about right. Sight picture's all right. As you can see, the rear is just a plain cut-out notch. So if we have a look down the sights here, something for contrast. Have a look down there. Pretty rudimentary, but you wouldn't really expect anything else from a gun this old. There we go. I thought that the front sight could have been a little bit thinner, but again, you're not going to be shooting this too far away, so precision isn't a huge deal. So yeah, rear sight's adjusted with that button. Nice and simple, relatively well made. You've got this which holds the bolt in place, doesn't do anything, it's just a metal part. Something worth noting is that the bolt is all metal, which is nice. Not too sure about higher powered gases. I have been using green gas in a certain amount, and it seems to be holding up well. Something interesting is the actual loading nozzle, which I showed you earlier, that black part. The actual loading nozzle is all metal. It feels and looks like plastic, but it's actually a very lightweight, thin metal, which seems to be holding up well. Yeah, it's interesting. It should mean that despite its small dimensions, it should be able to handle high-powered gases relatively well. But yeah, all metal, which I've never seen before. Never seen a gun come with a metal blowback unit, and yeah, it's interesting. And the gun does also have a metal chassis inside this plastic body, of course. Okay, let's have a look at trademarks on the body. We've got a nice Mauser mark there. So Mauser trademark looks very nice. And on the other side, got some small text. Waffenfabrik, Mauser, Obendorf, German markings. So it's nice, it does have trademarks. You would expect that from a Japanese brand, and they're quite nicely sort of printed in there. So yeah, overall, not terrible, but not the best body in the world. Shame there aren't easily available metal kits, but they would have really sell nowhere near enough, because not many people have these. Only other things to really talk about on the body are something that makes the M712 distinctive, which is the fire selector. So you've got N, which is semi-auto, which is a weird clicky feeling trigger, and R, which is full auto, which actually limits the trigger movement, other than opposite to other guns like the P90 that rely on the trigger cutting it off for a full auto. So like so the semi-auto is a short trigger pull, full auto is a full back trigger pull. It's the opposite, which is a pain. I'll talk about that in a minute. You've got your safety here. Oh, just say you have to push the button in to move it. And you've got your safety here, which works when the gun's cocked or when it's not. So I've got safe is the down, sorry, fire is the down position, and up is safe. So that works fine. As you can see, when the hammer isn't cocked, it moves it away from the firing pin, which is nice. The firing pin is hidden down there. Last thing to talk about in regard to the body is the bolt. As I said, it's all metal. The wings are metal. Big sort of metal assembly, just like the Marushin Auto Mag I reviewed on my channel a while ago, if I've still got that video up. And it springs back relatively easy. It really doesn't come into much contact with anything. There isn't any kind of bolt lock. It's quite rudimentary. It just sits in there and moves. One worry, potentially for the future, is the fact that this big wooden stock is held on by a screw which goes straight into plastic. Not a great idea. You know, the whole gun being held together by a long screw going into about 1 centimetre of plastic, that just isn't a good idea. It really needs a bolt in there, a metal nut, sorry, to really hold it together properly. So that's a bit disappointing. Trigger's metal, by the way, didn't mention that. But generally the stock is very nice. Again, big solid bit of wood, reasonably comfortable. Metal butt plate here, nicely made. Yeah, definitely improves the overall feel of the gun. Something interesting is that it's actually lopsided. As you can see here, that's the center point of it, and this side is much bulgier. I don't know if it's meant to be like that, but overall the pistol grip really isn't that comfortable. As you can see, you've got these sharp edges of the receiver that sort of jut out from the back of it, and it just isn't very nice to hold, especially when you're shouldering it. It's a very awkward grip. So I generally hold it solidly in my shoulder and with my supporting hand, and then I just kind of loosely hold this grip. I kind of hold it like that, or it's very small and stubby and it's hard to get a good grip on it. So I generally just use my other hands to hold the gun, and this is just to loosely hold the grip and pull the trigger. So that's really most of the gun covered. So something you might be wondering is how it actually shoots, how it actually works. And again, like the rest, it's actually a mixed bag. When it comes to actually PBs coming out of the barrel and the hop up, it actually shoots pretty well. It puts a 0.4 gram BB out at about 300 FPS, which is probably equivalent to 400 or so with a 6mm. So FPS is actually pretty impressive, although something very odd is that Marushin have clearly tried to reduce the FPS of this gun. There are holes drilled in both sides of the inner barrel, and the inner barrels, I do apologise for not showing you this, I don't have my tools with me, but the inner barrel actually has a huge dip in it. It's actually physically bent, so the BB has to travel down and then carry on its path. And I'm pretty sure this is down to Japanese FPS legislation, where they were actually forced to reduce the FPS, and rather than modify the bolt and everything, it was easier just to bend the barrel and drill a hole through it. I obviously can't do anything about the bend. I've plugged the hole and filled it with PFTE tape, whatever it's called, PTFE, plumber's tape, to try and get some of the FPS back. But they clearly fell foul of some of that Japanese legislation. They actually had to sort of drastically modify the barrel. Luckily, it doesn't give too bad performance. As I mentioned earlier on the box, it says LD2 hop-up system, and that means that it doesn't have just one hop-up system here. It's got an adjustable one, and then further on down the barrel, about here, it's got a fixed unit, so you actually get double hop. Which I suppose the idea of that was that it was probably needed for big, heavy 8mm BBs, but it really isn't needed, and they've been known to throw off accuracy quite badly. But this actually shoots reasonably well. That's one aspect of this I'm quite happy with. What I'm not happy with is the fire control and everything mechanism, which absolutely sucks. I mean, literally, Marushin must have no quality control or no pride in actually what they send out their factory, because out of the box, this didn't work as it should at all. Semi-auto was only shot in full auto, and full auto did nothing. It literally didn't let the trigger move back enough to fire the gun. I was really annoyed at that. You know, how can both Marushin and WGC let a gun sell that literally doesn't function? And I remember watching Karnseb's video of this gun, and I assumed he got a lemon because his one didn't work. But if you buy one of these, expect to have to do some internal work to get it working correctly. I mean, it was working out of the box, just nowhere near what it should. And I soon realised, rather than quality control, it's literally down to bad design. Rather than it works far better as a full auto gun than a semi-auto. The semi-auto position relies on you pulling the trigger and then pulling it so far that it trips sort of a switch. It kind of trips the trigger into stopping the hammer from falling again. So rather than an actual disconnector and a sear doing it all properly like they should have done, it literally relies on you pulling the trigger so hard and fast that it disconnects itself. So semi-auto literally only works if you do a jerky all the way back trigger movement. It's not as painful as I'm making it sound, but if you want to take a careful, precise pull like that, then you will have just emptied your mag. It'll go full auto. You have to do a very straight, full trigger pull, which is a real pain. So I generally just keep it full auto only. I did a little bit of internal work. I got it so that I had to just simply file the safety down just a little bit, so it lets it release. Sorry, not the safety, the fire selector, just so it actually releases the hammer. The hammer is metal, by the way. It's a big chunky metal hammer. No half cock position, cocked or not. That's it. So yeah, really, it's a terrible internal design. I think Marushin really only cared about how it looked and how it felt to a degree, and they really just wanted to get these produced, I think. I assume this is why they aren't made anymore, because, 2014, it is not acceptable for a Japanese company to be selling a relatively expensive product that doesn't work the way it should at all, and it's simply down to bad design. Anyway, that little rant over, I'm going to show you how it actually does work with a little bit of work done to it. Another thing is the hammer would just release if you kind of pulled it back too fast. That took a little bit of filing, a little bit of sanding. I'll put a little guide that I found in the description. A Japanese guy on the blog website, GeoCities, I think it's called, actually did his carbine up really nicely, and he showed a couple of pictures of what he did to the insides to make it work better. So I'll actually I'll post a link to that if I remember, if anyone's got one of these. So anyway, we've got a few shots in here. There's your big 8mm BB in your red, so pretty ugly looking, but as you can see, it comes forward, pushes it into the breech there, into the chamber. Right, so semi-auto. Let's see if we can get some single shots out. So I need to do very straight back, sort of harsh trigger pulls. Right, there we go. So you can see, blowback actually works all right. And just there, we had 2 shots and then it ran out of gas, and that was literally a full mag. I was going to save this right to the end, but it probably is right at the end. I've wasted enough time talking about stuff. These have got incredibly poor gas efficiency, capacity, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you'll be very lucky to get all 13 shots out of these, seriously. Especially on full auto, you'll be lucky to get 10. It just runs out so incredibly quickly, you wouldn't believe. It's a total gas hog. And I guess what I'm trying to say really is that this isn't a gun that was designed to be shot at all, really. They've made that pretty obvious, that the actual working of the gun was kind of an afterthought. Wouldn't be fair if I didn't give you a little demonstration of the full auto, which is actually better than the semi-auto. As I've explained, it actually works properly. I've always agreed or I've always thought it is easier to make a gun full auto than it is semi-auto. And they obviously didn't really bother putting a proper semi-auto mechanism in. Anyway, in here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we're lucky, we'll get through all that. And you'll notice at the end, hopefully, my homemade follower will lock the bolt in the rear position and it won't just carry on shooting. So we'll have some full auto here. Okay, so that was 5 shots there. Yeah, if I was going to skirmish this, it would be at a CQB site probably, and you wouldn't be able to use that because semi-auto doesn't work properly enough to really rely on it. So yeah, you really wouldn't want to skirmish this, but just for a little bit of playing in the garden, certainly for a unique, cool gun. The BBs fly well enough, it's just this terrible, terrible mechanism. I might make a disassembly vid and show you some of the insides. To disassemble, you cock the hammer, you unscrew the furniture, and then you push this little lever up. But overall, it is a flawed design, and they don't even seem to care about it. I think that just about wraps it up. Again, I think the overall thing is it's just a real mixed bag. It combines like really nice wood, nice styling, not bad quality. Materials aren't great, but quality is good. Quality is there. And it's very novel. It's very entertaining. I could sit here for hours just playing with this little cool bolt mechanism. But for a skirmisher, for someone that actually wants to shoot their guns a lot and to get them working and all that, I can't see any way to really recommend this unless you have, $170 to blow on something. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Because this is the kind of gun I like. I like the gun that I can teach people about and that you don't see a whole lot of, and that just looks really cool. It definitely suits the era that I like. Like with my Colt Police Positive, that kind of age where firepower is really starting to go somewhere, and it almost looks like a little Thompson with this in. But yeah, you've really got to decide whether you're a collector and whether you'd be happy having something that doesn't really shoot all that well and is a bit finicky and doesn't really make sense as an airsoft gun, or whether you're purely a skirmisher who would really have no use. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and there'll definitely be more on the way. Like I said, I've got another Marushin sort of classic rifle. I've got the Winchester, which I've got to say is a far superior gun to this. I'm looking forward to doing a video of that. I've also got my P09 duty gas blowback pistol to review, so look out for those. Hopefully within a couple of days I'll have some time to film. But in the meantime, check out my other videos, and thank you for watching.